I'm going to get into a recent newsletter on food maxing, coffee, and God slash perception. So if any of you are subscribed to the newsletter, you'll know where this is going. And you'll know that I mentioned that I'm going to be doing these YouTube narrations of the newsletters with added info. Obviously, things are different when you're on video. And yeah, we're going to get right to it. So thank you for being here. In the description later on, there'll be a link to the newsletter. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, you can hop in. There'll be a link to the Telegram where I'm going to be dishing out daily bites of wisdom pertaining to multidimensional health. So, all right. I'm going to start a little bit with a story, pretty much how I got here on this topic. And if you followed me for any amount of time, you'll know that I'm pretty holistic, so to speak, when I'm talking about stuff. So I'm usually trying to connect everything, the practical and the mystical, trying to connect it all for people so that we can live a more connected life, more holistic life. And so for me, I have a history in fasting. I have a history in connection with God, and I have a deep affinity, a deep love for coffee. Okay. So I connected those in this newsletter. And there's correlations between eating more, all right, and consuming coffee to perceiving the light of God. Okay. And you know that oftentimes we go the complete opposite direction. We talk about fasting, food minimalism, or scarcity, and no coffee, and how that helps perceiving God. So I wanted to give the other side of the equation because both are valid, but I wanted to give the other side of the equation because it's important that we understand that eating more, all right, is beneficial, especially if done well. Okay. And that coffee isn't a drug, but it's a nutrient, it's a superfood, and it can help stave off stress and it can increase metabolic function, basically increase energy. And if done right, it can induce a calm, energized state, not an anxious, energized state. All right. And I want to connect all of those, like I mentioned, with perception, with our connection with the divine. All right. So I'm basically going to be reading my newsletter and just talking about it with you. I didn't prepare in advance for this live. I just knew we're going to dive in to the newsletter. So right now, I'm drinking a cup of coffee with cream, with sugar. All right. And people are like, why do that? Like, why not just have your coffee black? Because having it black is healthier. All right. And I completely disagree with that statement. And one of the reasons is because of biochemistry. What's happening in the physiology? What's happening in your body when you're fasted and consuming black coffee? All right. You're basically increasing stress. You're increasing cortisol. You're increasing adrenaline. You're increasing these adaptive pro-aging stress hormones. All right. So it's always good to have breakfast. And it looks like it truly is the most important meal of the day. And then insert coffee and with cream and sugar. One of the things we have to understand is that cream, dairy from a quality source is a superfood because it contains protein, fats, and carbohydrates in the right ratios. Okay. So it's a true stress mitigator. All right. And that's what we want. We want to mitigate stress. And that is a practical way of stepping into rest. All right. So we need to get practical about rest as well and how to induce it, how to leverage rest in our everyday life versus leveraging stress, because stress is going to take time and cause wear and tear. So again, consuming some coffee. I happen to be posted up at a conference room in a local coffee shop, so that makes this video even better. And yeah, so a little bit of the story here is that through going through tremendous pain in my body, I discovered how therapeutic eating more was for my regenerative process, for my healing process. Okay. And how important it is to be um, euthyroid, to have a quality metabolic function if we want to regenerate more rapidly or readily. All right. If we want to have these regenerative capabilities on deck, ready to bring equilibrium and harmony to the body, we want to make sure that our metabolism is really good. Okay. Our thyroid function is really good. And through eating more, many people can repair their thyroid function that has been on a decline from potentially intermittent fasting, constant stress practices. All right. So I help people repair their metabolic function, basically their energy, and it's usually through enjoyment. And isn't that a great um, a great way to go forward, going forward from a state of abundance, from a state of enjoyment? All right, not not like in if you're in a stress state, you don't want to keep inducing stress to heal. All right, it can work, right? So like if you're stressed, then you could utilize another stressor to heal, like fasting, cold exposure, the list goes on. Yet, wouldn't it be more therapeutic for the body, all right, and more loving, so to speak, to treat stress with rest? All right. I think so. I think so. Okay. So let's start with food maxing. All right. When we rise in the morning, it's in part due to the updraft of stress hormones. They cause us to wake so that we can move from a physiological place of scarcity and survival into a place of rest and abundance via your morning meal, breakfast. All right. And if we wake in the middle of the night, which I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the next newsletter, it's often because we've burned through our fuel, primarily sugar. All right. And thus signaled a stress response to occur in the body. And I put a glass of milk with some honey and a pinch of salt can often remedy the unrest for people dealing with this, providing a steady stream of nutrients to keep us in a deeper state of rest and thus regeneration. So back to the story. Um, when I was in chronic pain, it was like I was running a marathon every day. All right. In pain 24/7. And so I was depleting the storehouse of nutrients, especially carbohydrates and sugars, because they're the fuel of abundance for the body. All right. They signal rest and they're the most easy to exhaust. All right. So I was burning through fuel rapidly. So bringing more fuel in caused pain to decrease. Okay. And that's because when all these adaptive hormones and stress hormones are elevated, the pain is going to be more prominent and pronounced. All right. And when we bring nutrition in, even the very act of chewing tones the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, everyone is talking about because of its the wandering nerve, its ability to induce rest in the entirety of the body. Okay. And the aspect of our nervous system. So when you chew, you actually are toning and improving vagal tone. Okay. You're improving your ability to rest. And that's why people talk about the importance of chewing your food, all right, properly versus just a few bites and swallow. It's good to it's good to practice chewing more because when you chew more, you digest better and therefore assimilate the nutrients better. All right. So this whole journey of mine and many others because people have found this out unconsciously or consciously. One of the reasons that people eat when they're stressed is to reduce stress. Some of the time when people are in pain, they reach out for something sweet because they're trying to reduce the upregulated adaptive pro-aging stress hormones. And they then think that their sweet tooth is a bad thing, but sweetness is actually a good thing. It can be said that stress is a perceived need for sugar. All right. I'll let that sit. So sweetness is important, and we've been uh, indoctrinated against it for some reason, but it is a macronutrient, okay, just like protein and fat, and shouldn't be ostracized or excluded from your life, okay? Even sugar itself in the refined form is anti-inflammatory. The thing that's causing sugar to not work well in your body isn't the sugar, it's the polyunsaturated fats. It's the oil seed industry and all the toxins in the food, in processed food or food outside, whatever it may be, that are causing an inability to metabolize sugar as fuel. And sugar, carbohydrates, are the anti-stress nutrients. So as I was going through my pain journey, I knew that the more I would consume quality protein, quality fat, and especially quality sugar sources, that the more the pain would begin to reduce. Okay. And that I understood that if I eat regularly, I can then cause any said stress in the hours to come to not exhaust me um, as deeply. So, what I mean by that is oftentimes we wait till stress is high before we bring nutrients in. All right. And that's one of our that's one of the issues. So like it's better to eat, all right, to eat to stimulate healthy metabolism and continue to increase metabolic function through eating versus not eating. Okay. So when you consistently fast or don't eat, you reduce your energetic function, your metabolism, your thyroid function, and you begin to live more off stress than proper physiology. Right. Okay. And now you can use stress to your advantage, which is awesome. All right. You can transmute the cortisol, the adrenaline, the aldosterone, all these different stress hormones, and you can shift things, right? Yet it's good to know that's happening, and it's good to know that you can actually optimize function more through nutrition, through leveraging nutrition often. And you can rebuild your metabolic function through nutrition. So this is a really like this is not hard. And oftentimes we think we need to do hard things to improve our health. Oftentimes we need to do restful things to improve our health and our energy. All right. So you can wake up and not have an appetite and think that's healthy, and then wait till later in the day to get a feed in, thinking that that intermittent fasting chronically is healthy for you. But the very fact that you wake up without an appetite is symbolic and a signal of low metabolic function. So you want to have a robust appetite when you wake up. You want to have that. And if you don't, you can actually cause that appetite to increase through having a meal. So a lot of people think like, hey, listen, if I don't wake up hungry, I shouldn't eat. And I should wait and eat in a small window because that's healthier. Well, we're finding out that's not entirely true. Okay. So we we wake and we can actually insert a feed even if we're not hungry. We can have breakfast, and then over time will develop an appetite when we wake. Because why? Not because we're getting addicted to food, but because we're actually increasing metabolic function. And therefore, there's a greater need to bring nutrition in because our energy is high. All right, which is good. All right. So, so in my journey, I've found that I can mitigate stress, induce rest through what? Eating more. And then on top of that, I can insert an elixir, a nutrient dense food and beverage form called coffee. All right. And I can introduce that and make it even more beneficial if I include cream or milk or sugar in the coffee itself. Why? Because if you wake and you have coffee, say black, without a meal, you're going to hyper leverage stress for fuel. All right. You're going to um, basically live from stress versus rest. And some people do that intentionally because they can become very productive working from stress physiology than rest physiology. All right. And like I said, it's just good to know these things so you understand what's happening behind the scenes in your biochemistry while you're going through your day. All right. And it's really good to know some of these things I'm saying so that you don't feel shame for eating and you don't feel shame for having your coffee with milk and with sugar. Okay. Because the coffee is a potent metabolic stimulator. And that's why people give it that whole drug connotation because it's a potent, right? It does some things. And if you have the black coffee in a fasted state, it'll put you into a low blood sugar state and it'll start this thing called fatty acid synthase. So you begin to not only increase stress physiology, increase cortisol, adrenaline, the ones people know about, and more, but you exhaust the sugar in the body, which isn't a good thing, right? And then you use start to use fatty acids for fuel. And there's this whole thing regarding um, using fat for fuel. And one thing that people don't often talk about 99% of the time is that the fat tissue, the fats in our body are different and they're carcinogenic due to polyunsaturated fats being saturated in the tissue due to the fat experiment that started in the early 1900s, which replaced traditional fats with fats that were made in a factory that were machine lubricants at one point, and those became a large percentage of the fat that we were getting in our diet. All right. And so when you start to burn fat for fuel, you have to understand that you, you could be combusting these polyunsaturated fats, and these directly reduce the function of your thyroid gland. Okay. Um, the ability to properly utilize sugars for fuel and everything like that. So a lot of people treat diabetes with a sugarless diet, right? But sugar isn't the issue. It's the fats that are the issue. All right. And it's often hypothyroidism. That's another issue in this equation. All right. And I faced it and I've rebuilt my energetic function and my thyroid function and the ability to more thoroughly situate myself in the seat of rest or operate from rest. Okay. So let's get into it a little bit more. I covered some of this. You could actually be following the newsletter. I covered some of this already just through going on a rant. But let me know how you're doing. This is actually like the first time I've ever done a YouTube. So I just totally forgot that I'm streaming on YouTube and that there's a whole like thing there. So subscribe, I guess, and leave a comment. Let me know what you're getting out of what I'm saying, if you're getting anything at all. And I hope you are. Just leave a comment. Like it? I think, yeah, like the video. That would be so, so great. So I put quality food is divine fuel, and consistently partaking of it is a God given tool to abide in rest. All right, I'll say that again. Quality food is divine fuel, and consistently partaking of it is a God given tool to abide in rest. And because of what I said prior, you probably understand that more deeply. All right. That food, that having food more consistently will ensure that stress is kept in check and rest is optimized, physiologically speaking. And therefore, your ability to reside in rest is optimized. So, in this, I say I often eat quality snacks in addition to my main meals of the day. Why? In addition to repairing my metabolism, I'm also protecting myself from potential stressors that may arise. See, a lack of nourishment causes our tolerance to a stressor to decline as we don't carry the nutrients, the fuel, to meet the energy demand of the presented stress. So, again, nutrition is a buffer against stress in the future. So, in a sense, when you're eating now, you're time traveling and inducing rest in a potential stressful situation you may face later in that day, whether it be a hard conversation, whether it be an interesting business venture that is stressful, whatever it may be, whatever is going on, you can protect yourself from stress through nutrition. All right. But when I was in debilitating pain, I learned to consistently bring nutrients in because the energetic demand, stress, was so great that it was damaging my metabolism. Managing the pain day to day seemed just as depleting as running a marathon, like I mentioned earlier. So if I didn't proactively buffer against the biological stress of chronic pain, I would compromise energetic function all the more. And if I use nutrition as therapy, consistently bringing quality nutrients in, I could better ensure that my energy stayed higher and thus my regenerative capabilities stayed online and they were more robust. This, my friends, is a major key to recover from a host of health issues and also to protect yourself from those issues. It's interesting that under eating can be just as damaging as what we would consider overeating or eating bad. Because under eating or chronic fasting, so to speak, can actually increase autoimmune physiology just as much as overeating things that are bad for you. All right. Or that your body doesn't agree with. Some bodies agree more with certain foods than others. So finding your unique individuality within nutrition is important. Now, I can definitely talk about things that, as a rule, will be super beneficial for the body. And I'll do that later on or in another video. I put side note, sometimes we think we're addicted to sweets when in all reality we're highly stressed and thus our stress hormones are high. Therefore, we're looking for something to bring them down. And carbohydrates and sugars do just that. They, quality carbohydrates, also buffer against hypothyroid stress states that are brought on by stress in all its forms. And when we reduce our consumption of harmful oils, like I was talking before, and PUFA, right, which are synonymous, like mentioned earlier, we can better utilize and metabolize the sugar we bring into our body. And I'm keeping it simple here. So I put eating well is often is highly protective. And I know I know I've said that a few times, but my whole goal in this is to like shift potential errors or glitches in one's operating system, in your operating system. Because a lot of times in the background of our brain or our mind or in our subconscious, unconscious, right, we have these things in place that say sugar is bad or eating is good, but eating less is better or fasting is better or these things. And that's just not true. So it's good to know that. Like I had a client once, a person I worked with, that was indoctrinated by, say, like a ketogenic diet all the time. And she literally couldn't reach out for an apple on a tree, right? That sounds funny. But she couldn't reach out for sweetness because she had this operating system. She had this track running that was inferior nutrition, inferior food. You probably hear the train in the background, which is kind of cool. But so you see, like, we have to get some of these things out of our operating system so that we can function more optimally. Yeah. Like 3 meals a day is really good for you. And I definitely argue that it's way better than intermittent fasting long term. Okay. And that right there is very contrary to popular opinion. But that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to make a case for just living a rested life. Okay. And so I put eating well and often is highly protective and helps shield you from stressors that come through your day. It also can yield a bodily transformation that is long lasting as it optimizes metabolic function versus downgrading it, such as carbohydrate deficient dietary trends or chronic fasting tend to do. So, what's great about eating more as a journey to weight loss or a healthy set point of body weight is that the fruit can remain. Oftentimes, if you do it in a hyper quick way, um, you'll have to continue to utilize those practices to stay in that state. Versus if you use nutrition and eating more and well to do it, you just increase metabolic rate and your body begins to like navigate towards its best set point in terms of its weight. Okay. And because you're not utilizing stressors to get to that weight, you're actually not lowering thyroid function. Okay. So that means that energy is high and you're not jeopardizing energy production to lose the weight. All right. You're keeping energy production in place through proper nutrition. All right. And your body just goes the way it's supposed to go. Okay. So you see, like, you see what happens is that oftentimes you can do like a fast or you can restrict, all right, to lose weight, all right, restrict too much to lose weight and so on and so forth. And in the process of doing that, you reduce biological energy to get to that goal so that when you stop doing that practice because it's not sustainable, the weight comes back, all right, versus just getting the metabolism fixed so that it does what it needs to do. Like, for instance, oftentimes people make this claim that fasting is good because of autophagy. And that's true. But guess what also triggers autophagy, which is cell cleanup? Eating more. Because a robust metabolism, a healthy thyroid, the healthy function of your metabolism automatically does cell cleanup and takes care of the stuff in the body. I would argue eventually that autoimmunity can be fixed by reinstating energy production. All right. Basically addressing hypothyroid energy deficient states. So if energy is high, not like calm energized state, if your energy, biological energy is in place, then the body starts to do what it needs to do, such as detox what needs to be detox and bring harmony into the immune system where there is disharmony. Okay. And I'm an example of this because I I have an autoimmune condition of a rare form where all where I'm not supposed to have any hair because the universalis or totalis alopecia that I had um, uh, destroyed every hair follicle and attacked every hair follicle. So many of you guys know me when I had absolutely no hair on my body, and I'd wear glasses to frame my face because I had no eyebrows as well either. And I'm still going through it. Like, there's some shedding happening and so on and so forth. But the more that I begin to do the things I'm talking to you about, the more I begin to instate rest in my physiology versus unrest, the better my immune function is. And it's cool. It's cool to like actually experiment and see these results. All right. So I talked about even the act of chewing is a modality to increase parasympathetic rest and relaxation. All right. And chewing, okay, chewing is huge for facial development and facial structure. And chewing actually enables optimal breathing. Okay. Facial structure is everything. I think Weston Price delved into that pretty deeply. And my history and teaching proper breathing mechanics and respiration, coupled with eating the right diet to cause facial architecture to improve. Like you can improve breathing mechanics through eating a good diet and through chewing and all of this. Okay, because when you chew, your mouth is wrapped up quite literally with the process of eating, and you have to leverage your breath through your nose, which is the proper way to breathe. And chewing just makes that and states that better. So that's often overlooked when we're talking about these topics. So I wanted to mention that. But when I mentor people on rebuilding, regenerating, or optimizing their body, I usually find out that they are over leveraging stress. And I put this can be through a suboptimal lifestyle, dysfunctional breathing, poor nutrition, lack of movement and biomechanics, inability to process trauma, the list goes on. Or they're living a suboptimal lifestyle through what they think is super optimal, such as regular fasting, intermittent fasting, black coffee without fuel, chronic cold exposure, frequent intense training, especially training in a fasted state, sauna, stress, carnivore, keto, plant-based, toxic supplements, and again, the list goes on. Yeah, it's good to mention toxic supplements. I know a lot of people that I've worked with when I asked what supplements they were taking, when we started to reduce some of those supplements because they had bad excipients in them, they started to get better. So sometimes the very supplements that you're buying and spending a lot of money on to get better are the things that are keeping an allergenic state in the intestine, causing aggravation to the whole body. All right. Yeah. So again, I found that many people who are pursuing optimal states of being are stressing themselves into a hypothyroid, low energy, inflammatory state through the very interventions advised as solutions. So I need to take a break and breathe right now. All right, been going for about 30 minutes. Expected to go for 10 minutes. This is what happens. All right. So, too much biohacking seems to be pro aging and thus damaging to energetic function. All right. So, you guys know me if you know me that biohacking is something that I've taken some ground in my life. So, I know I've went to the edge and back again, so to speak, in some of the biohacking practices. And now I have explored rest as deeply as possible so I can find a better way, so to speak. And I do understand that this is extremely nuanced, this is extremely multifaceted. People can really benefit from fasting, people can really benefit from cold exposure, people can really benefit from minimalizing food. All right. And minimalizing coffee intake. And you're like, say what? You just said all those things you said. Yeah, people can, if people minimize food that is irritating their body, that's good until you find the nutrition that causes a therapeutic response in your body. All right. So if people are like reducing their exposure to irritants, that's really good. And that's going to help people shift their body. Okay. And I would think that some of the major benefits to fasting are because people have stopped eating foods that trigger allergens and endotoxin to be released in the intestine. So a lot of the relief people are finding through fasting is because they've reduced the allergenic foods in the diet. Okay. That's just the way it is. Okay. And then same with coffee. Like if you don't have quality coffee, then a lot of times the beans have mycotoxins and mold. So a lot of people having a very hard time with coffee are because the beans are just bad and you're bringing allergens into the body. And a lot of people have an issue with coffee because they have it black. Why? Because a hyperallergenic state can also be a low blood sugar state. All right. So when you drop blood sugar, stress is exacerbated, or whatever condition you're going through begins to become worse. I know this very well. Whenever I'd hit a low blood sugar state through not having adequate fuel, my condition would flare. All right. So it's another case for food maxing as well. All right. Coffee. I hope this is going to be enjoyable for you guys listening. Um, just this long form content right here. Okay. So, coffee, I talked a little bit about its benefits, how it's a nutrient full, vitamin like adaptogenic beverage. Okay. That can like shift some people because a lot of people, I talk to, they're like, coffee's not good, but it's necessary. All right. They're like, I'm addicted to it, but I know it's not good. Now, this is like very, very common. And I love to dispel this because it's like saying you're addicted to coffee is pretty much saying you're addicted to a nutrient. All right. Yeah, let that sit a little bit. So like coffee it's got like 1,000 substances in it. It has high levels of magnesium, various minerals. It's got vitamins. Okay, it's really good. That's why it's a potent metabolic stimulator, not just caffeine. Caffeine is an aspect of coffee, but coffee is much more than just caffeine. Coffee is an adaptogenic vitamin like nutrient. Okay. And so when you don't have fuel in the body, when you bring coffee in, it'll just exhaust your your storehouses and put you in a stress state. All right. Which causes more wear and tear. So I said this. All right. Many arise in the morning and think it's healthy to delay eating as long as possible. Now, remember, we wake in part due to an elevation of stress hormones. This is our body telling us to break fast, to have breakfast, and to restore rest via the breakfast. Yet we go on, continue to fast, further leveraging stress for fuel, which creates more wear and tear. Then a black coffee is inserted, which is a potent metabolic stimulator. But remember, there's no fuel on deck. There's no fuel present because we didn't have the breakfast. All right. We didn't bring stress down through nutrition before inserting the metabolic stimulator. All right. So if you have no fuel to work with, stress is further upregulated and you're operating from unrest versus rest. And it's easy to get addicted to stress. It masquerades as high energy, clear minded state, but it's a survival mode. All right. It's not a mode of thriving, it's a survival mode. So this, my friends, is the physiology of fasting, ketosis, low carb, no carb, and its counterparts. Sure, these approaches can be highly therapeutic, and they do have their place. I know this from personal experience, but in my more mature experience in study, they don't seem to be the most optimal way forward. Again, we want to default to a physiology of thriving versus surviving. We don't want to slow our metabolic rate. All right. For health, we want to optimize it. So if you have a quality nutritional lifestyle, then chronically delaying your feed will undoubtedly compromise structure and energetic function. And consistently supplying yourself with nutrients will remedy deficiencies, induce deeper degrees of rest, thus increasing your efficiency in life. So I kind of went on a little bit to just say eat real food. All right. Healthy, humane, quality animal based nutrition is foundational. All right. So just, all right. But like I understand everyone has their own path in nutrition and eating and is very sacred. All right. So, but I just want to give a case for ensuring there's um, less allergenic foods in your diet. All right. And some people just don't know that they're having irritating allergenic foods all the time. All right. I've worked with people and we've removed some of these and they've gotten better, but they had no idea that it was what was setting them back. Okay. So in the description in the future or in a little bit, you'll find ways to work with me if you want to work with me for all of that stuff. All right. And I say organic ripe fruit, raw honey. All right. Properly prepped vegetables. That's a key. Prepped vegetables. Most of the time, raw vegetables work against you versus for you, aside from a few. One of them being like a raw carrot. A raw carrot can be organic, can be extremely beneficial to intestinal health by cleansing the intestine. And it's pretty awesome. So yeah, just I'll do another like video on nutrition, and I do want to make a case for another. So my background's like pretty focused on the mystical and transcendent, and I've been really focused on the connected and practical stuff right now because oftentimes we're trying that whole transcendent approach to life, but we don't have the physical, uh, connected, practical stuff sorted. So we're glitching a lot. All right. So I totally understand there's an ability to live off of like the divine, to live off of uh, God within. All right. There's this place of transcendence, and I'm super passionate about that as well, and I will speak to that in the future. I just often find that most everyone, even those who've done it, often have to repair metabolic function at some point or another because of the damage that has been accrued through it. Or I know this from several people, all right, myself included. So I think it's good to figure out like how do we bridge both worlds, the bridge the transcendent, right, seated in heaven to the earth and bridge from the earth to there. So I think stewarding the body temple, stewarding the physical makeup through doing things very practically can yield very mystical results. And that's pretty much where I'm going with this article is that food max fat, like maximizing food intake and eating well, coupled with something like coffee with cream and sugar included, can keep you in a rested state, not a stressed state. And so what happens as well is when you're in that rested state, you're in a pro-thyroid, pro-metabolic state. And that state is a calm, energized state. And when metabolism is high, you get more out of each moment in life. All right. So hibernation, everything slows down. And some people, through these stress practices, are putting themselves into a more hibernation physiology than a active physiology. All right. So that's huge. All right. We want to get that calm, energized state. All right. We don't want to hibernate. And that's a lot of the anti-aging longevity research is based on this rate of living theory. And it's all about suppressing metabolic function to live longer. And then a lot of stressful practices to reduce metabolic function so you can live longer. But I don't want to live longer in a lower energized state. I want to live longer in a calm, energized state, in a nourished state, in an abundant state. And so, yeah, that's huge, right? I want to live from light. Sure. I do understand that, the transcendent aspect. And did you know that sugar is another byproduct of light? Okay, so right now, through consuming sugar, I'm building a bridge between working on light energy as well. Because through photosynthesis, we see that sugar is created. Through light, sugar is created. It's a byproduct of light. It's a new one that I'm going to be talking about more. Because I think sugar, and I think it speaks for itself, the research, but we've had a lot of propaganda is like sugar, it's anti-inflammatory. But most naturopaths and doctors and so on and so forth will tell you reduce sugar, reduce sugar, reduce sugar. It's inflammatory. But they actually use sugar to treat allergenic states. Okay. And there's anyways, they've even treated diabetes at one point with sugar, and mortality was improved. Okay. So I think that's interesting, right? I'll probably, if somebody mentions in the comments, post the study on that, just remind me and I'll eventually put that in the description. So moving on. Um, an area I'd recommend practicing food minimalism in is in the area of oil seed or seed oil or vegetable oil consumption. If you reduce consumption, you'll you'll just begin to metabolize sugar and have a healthier overall trajectory in life. Okay. And unfortunately, everything typically when you eat out or it's in most foods, it's hard to get, um, it's hard to do unless you start to get really connected with your food and begin to cook for yourself and so on and so forth. All right. Don't shy away from the tallow, the butter, the ghee, the coconut oil, the saturated fats. Okay. What you want to shy away from is the propaganda, is the stuff that was considered healthy, which is all the vegetable oils. Somebody messaged me and they're like, hey, listen, I use avocado oil. Is that good? And I said, listen, it's better than say canola oil or any of those other ones, but it still can be hepatotoxic. It's not necessarily protective to the cell. Saturated fats are actually protective to the cell, they're protective to the body. So some of these other ones are just, they're just not, it's not therapeutic. They're tolerable, but not therapeutic. All right. And I don't want you to become hyper vigilant on all the foods and everything. I want you to enjoy life, have social outings, enjoy your food, all of it. And then you can steward your body through wisdom on some of the things I'm saying at home. That'll be huge. Okay. In the article here, I go on to talk about a history of in the early 1900s, how we were taken off saturated fats that work with our biology and put on polyunsaturated fatty acids that jeopardize energetic function. I go into history on that, but I'll save that for another time, or you can check out the article in my newsletter by subscribing. Eventually, I'll have a database of all of my articles for you to check out all the ones I've done, which are very little because I'm starting that process now. But a year down the road, there'll be like a little bit of a database of articles to check into. So I talk about the fat experiment a little bit there, and that's in the article. And I go back to coffee, potent metabolic stimulator. And in a world where we have rampant energetic suppression due to stress, poor contaminated nutrition, environmental toxins, popular unhealthy dietary trends, and more, coffee can be an incredible aid. So for a lot of people are trying to like reduce coffee consumption in their life, but it's the very thing that's causing them to have good energy production because maybe their thyroid function is low. Which there's this book um, by Broda Barnes called Hypothyroidism: The Unsuspected Illness. All right, so that's pretty much a lot of people are facing it and they don't realize it. And when they're consuming coffee, it's almost like they're taking thyroid and is extremely anti-inflammatory, pro-metabolic, and energizing them and causing them to show up good in this world. So when they reduce it, a lot of people are like, because of shame, because maybe they should get off coffee because it's causing adrenal fatigue, which is a hoax. Not a hoax entirely, but you just got to understand like a little bit about physiology and biochemistry to understand that that's just like not necessarily the case, especially if you do it right. So a lot of us, I think, need need a little bit of help here, and it's a good source of magnesium. All right. And so a lot of people are depleted in magnesium, and coffee is a rich source of it. All right. So a lot of people, you know, you want to understand that's why it's like an adaptogenic like beverage. like I said here, what sets coffee apart is that it's a rich source of magnesium, which is deficient in many. An interesting fact is that an underactive thyroid results in a compromised ability to retain magnesium. So some people they take it and they have to keep taking because their thyroid function and metabolism isn't high and it's not causing the body to retain and hold on to it. So coffee, when done right, like I already mentioned, can cause your body to retain magnesium and minerals. So it can actually support retention of this anti-stress pro-rest mineral, right? And what's great about it is coffee has supportive nutrients in the form of B vitamins, as well as numerous anti-inflammatory substances. So there's 1,000 natural compounds in coffee. In collaboration with caffeine, antioxidants, and diterpenes, it sets it apart. This, my friends, proclaims the anti-inflammatory nature of coffee, quality coffee, I have to add. I'll put a link in the description for, one of the few quality uh, uh, coffees out there, but your local coffee roaster, I'd always suggest you support your local coffee roaster, craft coffee shop. Just check if their beans are sourced really well and contaminant free. Some of them have organic beans, but not every small farm can get the organic certification because it costs a lot of money. So just little tidbits right there. I'm in a great coffee shop right now. They have good coffee, Theory, Reading, as well as Evergreen, Feast. Okay, that's I'm not gonna do that. Caffeine itself is neuroprotective, brain protective, and offers a host of other benefits when done right. Diterpenes such as caffeine responsible for down-regulating inflammatory mediators. I can go on, and I really can, but we've been here quite a while. I want to know, do you guys enjoy this? Are you guys finding this entertaining? Are you finding this are you enjoying listening to me talk about these things in the background of your day? Let me know because I've just started this YouTube flow and I want to edit this according to the audience and what they find helpful. You can actually drop in the comments some topics you want me to talk about. Please feel free. So one thing coffee helps is it helps increase intestinal motility. All right. I think many of you know if you have a coffee, you're typically heading to the bathroom pretty soon after, and that's good. You want to have good bowel movements. You want to have 2 to 3 a day. Like that's healthy. All right. That's good. Okay. So you want to increase motility and movement. And the more you hang on to stuff in the gut, the more it has a chance to recycle and cause inflammatory states. So regularly moving your bowels is incredibly useful for detoxification. For instance, if somebody doesn't have regular bowel movements, they should not necessarily do a detox because they're not going to excrete things, they're going to recycle it, and it's going to lead to estrogen dominant inflammatory states. All right, so coffee optimizes bowel transit time, which is a major perk. The increase in metabolic energy function from the coffee is wonderful if you have support for it, meaning you have a meal in your body, you have cream and sugar in your coffee. You can use honey, you can use maple syrup if you're offended by white sugar. All right, but white sugar, refined sugar even is super healthy. And sometimes refined white sugar is better than cane sugar because cane sugar still has things on it and it can have contaminants on it. The refined, it's all contaminants are going to be excluded. All right. But enjoy what you want to enjoy. All right. Oftentimes when I mention sugar is healthy, people just glitch right there. And so maybe that's you. Maybe you haven't heard anything else that I said because you heard that and got offended. All good. So when coffee is done right with the support, like I've already mentioned, you'll feel calm, focused, motivated. You'll feel warmth, the sense of stable energy. When done wrong, anxiety, shakiness, sweating, feeling weird, lack of focus, cold extremities. Okay, that can be had by quality, like coffee that's not quality, or if you have lethargic or bad liver function, if you respond poorly to coffee, it can be a sign of liver needing to be optimized. And what's nice about coffee is that does improve liver function. There's tons of studies. So it delays the onset of Alzheimer's, it increases liver function. It's super neuroprotective, like I mentioned. It actually helps fend off cancer physiology. So many things I can get into on the benefits of coffee. All right. Um, so when you consume coffee, the sugar in your bloodstream is used because the caffeine stimulates your metabolism. Therefore, if you don't add support slash fuel, cream, sugar, or a meal to the mix, you'll burn through the supply in your bloodstream and cause a stress response and cause an increase in adaptive stress pro-aging hormones. This helps us to understand that carbohydrates are highly protective and contribute to a restful psychosomatic environment. So here we are at the end. How does coffee consumption better connect us to the divine or optimize perception? In short, regular quality feeds with the addition of good coffee that is backed up by additional fuel further increases energy. As a result of this increase in energy, you'll be able to process more information per unit of time. And in a sense, hack time itself, getting more out of life. I've come to give you life and life more abundantly. Right? John 10:10. Low metabolic function can be likened to an enemy that has come to steal our time and necessary energy for repair. Eating well and regularly signals abundance instead of survival. It also induces rest while simultaneously enhancing your energetic function. An increase in metabolism coincides with a more optimal energetic state. This, in turn, can better stimulate your personal genius, allowing you to better see and perceive and hear and understand. We've already addressed that chronic fasting, skipping breakfast, skipping meals, low, no carb, food minimalism can reduce temperature. Metabolic suppression can reduce temperature. All right. So body temperature is so important. All right. A lot of people are doing cold exposure right now, and they don't even have, they can't even achieve the right body temperature. All right. 98.6. So you can track your body temperature. Like I'll tell somebody like, hey, if they're working with me, I'm like, hey, what's your body temperature? Like you shouldn't do the cold exposure if you're not able to hit that 98.6 range, because this is going to make you more hypothyroid and less functional. All right. The essence of life is warmth. Okay. And the brain is metabolically demanding organ with intense heat production. So cooling the body, cooling the brain is not the highway to health or the ticket to anti-aging. All right. It's the ticket to lower energy states, metabolic function, stress physiology. All right. Therefore, we can conclude that your unique intelligence is optimal when you're consistently and comfortably warm. And we can also theorize that divine intelligence is better sustained in a similar manner, like sustained. I mean, like consistent. Okay. If you remember any of my early work, you'll know well that I've said that the cold is a God-given elixir. And I still stand by that, albeit half-heartedly. More on the nuance of cold therapy in the future article. Okay. I'm talking a little bit about it now. A body and brain at rest, warm, is superior than one in stress, cold. All right. He has come to give you rest and bring you a more abundant life, not stress and scarcity, although he can work through it all. All right. Like there's so many paths, all right, to just like enhancing energy and taking care of your health. Okay. Like I said, like there's room for all of these stress-based practices. You just want to make sure that you're in a rest, you have a rest ecosystem. You want to facilitate a restful ecosystem in the body and move into stressors. So, and know that you can bounce back. Like a lot of people struggle with cold hands, cold feet. All right. They struggle with a robust pulse. They have a low pulse, which is not actually a marker for health, and they have a low body temperature, which is also not another marker for health. And so they have these hypothyroid symptoms. All right, but then they're doing all these crazy things, and then they're damaging their metabolism even more. All right. Um, so we want to induce rest, we want to induce warmth. You know that a little child, like most of the time, or at least back in the day, they just ran warm, like their hands and feet, even if they were outside in winter, their hands and feet were warm to the touch, and their pulse is high. It was like high pulse, robust states of energy. That's what we want. All right. And I said, sure, I can share on fasting as it relates to spirituality, both its pros and its cons. I shared a little bit about that here, even its pros and cons, physiologically speaking. All right. And I'll do that in the future even more. Most people think that they should fast more and eat less for physical health and spiritual growth, but that isn't true in most cases. Sharing what I have in this article, food maxing, coffee, therapy, etc., is actually more counterculture and needed to be said right now. Okay. The promised land of nutrition is one of milk and honey. All right. Every macronutrient, micronutrient, the sweetness of life is definitely included. And of course, quality coffee. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this narration of the newsletter, Food Maxing, Coffee, and Perception slash God. Moving forward, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. I'd love for you to join the newsletter. I'd love to work with you one on one. I think I'll be doing it for another year or 2 years. So hop in if you'd like. And yeah, till next time, Saroon, I'm out. How was that? You enjoy it? Good. Right on. Feels good. Feels good to do these. I hope the people ask for more. I have no idea. I've never went live before on YouTube, so I don't think there was an audience, but I'm sure in the future there will be. Let's see.